Today we will discuss about the epidemiology, which is one of the important topic related to the subject community pharmacy. So while starting epidemiology, we will give a little touch toward the previous lecture, uh, where we have discussed into much detail regarding the family planning. So in case of family planning, we basically mentioned that the main focus in case of family planning is on the maternal and child health. And yes, of course, every person have the right, just if they desire for the child. So of course, every person have the right. But the important thing is that we should have to educate the people on community basis that yes, of course, a gap should be there among the consecutive childbirth, and especially because this not only affect the mother health, because this have a direct effect on the entire family and on the entire community society system. So that's why various methods are to be used in order to just control the family planning. And we have discussed in too much detail those methods, like we mentioned a lot of contraceptive methods. In case of contraceptive, we mentioned that is the oral contraceptive, injectable, NAR plant, emergency contraceptive. Then we basically mentioned the various barriers, and spermicides, and of course we then mentioned the traditional method. In case of oral contraceptive, we mentioned in details, that is the about the COCs, combined oral contraceptive, that basically contain the two hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone, and to be used especially for 21 days, because 21 pills are there to be used for 21 days, and then the person should have to wait for 7 days. They should have to continue for the coming time. Where in case of uh, uh, progesterone only pill, to be known as POPs, basically in that category we take the support of only single hormone, that is the progesterone. It doesn't contain the estrogen, and of course, yes, a schedule should be followed, and the progesterone only pill should be used for the respective period of time according to the schedule. And then we mention about the injectables, of course, that contain only progesterone hormone, and mostly we take support of intramuscular route, and should be administered with a 3 months interval. And then the last one, that is the NAR plant, which is too much important, yes, of course, and a little minor surgery is basically included. And yes, almost small 6 capsules are there. They have to be implanted in the level of the upper arm regions, and they work basically for at least 5 years. But I will never suggest such methods which work for a prolonged period of time, because a problem will be there if a person just desire to come back toward the normal menstrual cycle. And then basically we focus on the various barrier methods, like the condom methods. Of course, that's also one of the methods available for both female and male. And then we discuss in too much detail about the spermicides, which contain the two substances, that is the active and inert substances, yes, of course. And then we discuss about the other methods, like iodized intrauterine devices, which are to be mostly, they may contain the copper or the progesterone. Yes, they are, the respective substances are to be released, and they basically work just to inactivate the respective substances, I mean the spermatozoa. And the basic mechanism we have discussed in too much detail, just to suppress the evolution mechanism in order to make the area less favorable for the implantation. And the next one we have discussed, that is just to decrease the moment of the spermatozoa toward the upper part of the or upper part especially. And that was the basic mechanism. Yes, all the methods have a lot numbers of the advantages, and some disadvantages are there, yes, of course. And then we basically focus on the emergency contraceptive, to be known as post-coitus contraceptive, which basically we take support of the lunar just 1.5 milligram, and to be used within 48 or 72 hours of the conception. So we have to discuss in too much detail about the family planning methods. So today we will discuss about the epidemiology. By definition, epidemiology is basically the study of frequency, distribution, and determinant of the disease and other health related condition in human population, and the implication of this study to the promotion of health and the prevention and control of health problem. So simply we can say that epidemiology is basically the study of frequency, or you can say the occurrence of a disease and its distribution and pattern in a given uh, community or population, and basically uh, how we will prevent such disease condition in a given, in a respective population or community, and in order to prevent and to control the health related problems. So this is related about the definition. So if we focus on the definitions, so different terminologies are there. The first one, population. So epidemiology basically focus on population, not on an individual. It means that basically in case of epidemiology, we should have to focus on population. So priority should be there regarding the population, not regarding the individual status. For instance, if we focus on Ethiopia, so of course the people of the Ethiopia, they are facing a problem regarding the malaria. So of course here we should have to focus on the malaria condition related to the Ethiopia, because mostly the Ethiopia people have the problem regarding the malaria. So let's suppose if someone talk about the cancer in Ethiopia, so that will be considered as the rare case. So in case, cancer cases in case of Ethiopia, this will be considered as the minor. So that will be not the major one. So that's why we should have to focus on the population. So cancer may be related to some, cancer cases may be rare, so this will be related to some individual, where the malaria is most related to all community of the Ethiopia. So that's why on priority basis we should have to talk for malaria, not for the cancer. The next one, which is too much important terminology regarding the epidemiology definition, and that is the frequency. So frequency basically show the occurrence of a disease, how basically a disease occur in a respective society, a community, and this is related to the occurrence state. So basically it's also one of the important terminology. The next one, that is the health related condition. So a lot of parameters are there in our society, in our community. They basically directly or indirectly affect our health system. So of course we should focus on all those parameters which directly or indirectly affect the health system, and those parameters may be like related to injuries, births, and unemployment, poverty, smoking, because these are the various parameters which directly or indirectly affect the health system. So this is also very important related to the epidemiology. And the next one, distribution. So distribution is basically the geographical distribution of a disease condition in respective community, and this is too much important. And various, yes, of course, various parameters should be there, and some disease condition may be restricted to some geographical area. So this is also very important to be studied under the epidemiology. Determine basically, let's suppose a particular candidate have the ability to develop a disease condition or not. So this is also too much important. Use of epidemiology. So epidemiology have a lot numbers of uses, have a lot number of applications, and the main focus is on the disease. So the first one, there is just to make a community diagnosis. So epidemiology help to identify and describe health problems. So of course this is one of the major use of the epidemiology, in order to properly diagnose the community, in order to properly identify all health related problem in a respective community. Example, the prevalence of anemia or the nutritional status of children. So of course a lot numbers of parameters are there, and obviously we have mentioned in too much detail, they have a direct effect on the health status in the health system. So of course this is the important application or use of the epidemiology, in order to identify, to diagnose all the parameters which have direct relation with the health system. So this is too much important. This may include the nutrition system. This may be like what are the major area, the major parameters that directly affect the health system. So that may be the disease condition, that may be like we mentioned, that is the unemployment, poverty. So all these are parameters we have to properly identify, because they directly affect the health system. The next one, to monitor continuously over a period of time the change of health in a community. For example, the effect of vaccination program, health education, nutritional supplementation. So this is also the important application or use of the epidemiology, just to monitor on continuous basis the health related system. For example, the vaccination program, the just to health related education and nutritional supplements. So nutritional related, so balanced diet, or so a lot of factors are there. So this is also one of the important application. The next one, to investigate an outbreak of communicable disease. So this is too much important because certain in certain areas, certain climate condition, change in climate, this have a direct relation with the spreading of the disease, especially if we talk for the contagious communicable diseases. So of course we have to properly investigate those communicable diseases which are to be have a direct relation with the respective population or the respective climate. So this is also one of the application of the epidemiology. And the next one, to plan effective health services, intervention and remedies all depend on accurate community data. So of course we should have to collect the proper data regarding the community, and then we should have to focus on the various various methods that has to be used in order to prevent those diseases in the respective community or society, and in order to prevent health related problems and to prolong the lifespan of the individual. This is too much important. So a lot uses and applications are there. The next one, basically epidemiology, as we mentioned, this is related to the disease condition, how basically a disease spread in our society, what is basically the nature of what should be the nature of the disease, either it's epidemic, endemic, pandemic, and basically it's communicable, too much contagious or not, like in present time COVID-19. So here we should have to focus on this terminology also. So epidemic versus pandemic. Epidemic, so a simple way to know the difference between the epidemic and pandemic is to remember the P in pandemic, which means a pandemic has a passport, a pandemic is an epidemic that's travel. So epidemic, we can say that of course any disease which is basically present in a society, and let's suppose if a disease if there is the outbreak of a disease in a respective community, in a respective system, so that disease will be considered as the epidemic disease. So if there is outbreak of the disease will be to consider as the epidemic one. Where pandemic one, so let's suppose if the disease covered the entire globe or several countries, so then we will mention that the disease is basically the pandemic in nature. So like if we focus in present time, that is the COVID-19, so COVID-19 is not the epidemic one, that is the pandemic, because yes, of course this is within the epidemic, it's pandemic, because yes, outbreak was there, yes, initially the disease was restricted to the Wuhan city of the China, so that was epidemic because that was restricted to the China, Wuhan city. But anyhow, later on it covered the entire globe, and that's why it's considered as the pandemic. So the next one, that is the epidemic versus endemic. So but what's the difference between the epidemic and endemic? In endemic is activities actually spreading new cases of the disease subsequently. So endemic, let's suppose if a disease condition is present in a respective society, in a respective community, so that is to be known as endemic. Okay, but it means that there is no outbreak of the condition. So if there is outbreak of the disease, so that is to be known as endemic. It means that a disease condition present in a respective population, so that is to be the endemic. So but if there is outbreak of the disease, so this will be considered as the epidemic. And let's suppose if it covers the entire society, so that is to be known as the pandemic. So the next one, which is too much important, related especially the epidemiology, and of course we have focused on disease status, contagious diseases, communicable diseases, spreading of the diseases. So obviously once we start talk for the disease condition, so of course we should have the respective data for the disease, and we should have various procedures, methods, and those methods should be used how to control the disease. So for that we should have to use different statistical analysis, and that's why different data should be used and study procedure should be used. So classification of epidemiological study. So in case of epidemiological study, we have the following, that is the descriptive study or hypothesis formulation. The next one, that is the analytical study, hypothesis testing, and the next one, that is experimental study or hypothesis confirmation. And so the first one, that is the descriptive or hypothesis formulation. So here we have to formulate the hypothesis. In case of descriptive study, which is observational one, here we have to formulate the hypothesis. So time, place, and person, that is to be included, especially in case of the hypothesis. So descriptive, in case of for the descriptive study, the hypothesis, to formulate the hypothesis, so all these parameters should be there, that is the time, place, and person. So the good example is lung cancer is a common cancer of the for example male population in Pakistan in 2014. Let's suppose if we focus for a data that is regarding the 2014, so we mentioned that let's suppose lung cancer is a common cancer of male population in Pakistan in 2014. So here person is male, there is the place in Pakistan, this is male, place is Pakistan, and time is 2014. So that's why just for descriptive study, which is related to the observational which is observational study, and basically we have to formulate the hypothesis, and to formulate the hypothesis, just we should have to focus on time, place, and person. Example, that is good example is lung cancer, and that is related to the people of there is the male problem in Pakistan in one of the survey which was current 2014, let's suppose. So the next one, that is the analytical study. Here we have to test the formulated hypothesis. So here hypothesis should be tested. To make hypothesis, yes, of course it's not a problem, but just to test the hypothesis, it's too much a problematic way. This is not an easy task, it's a problem. So for hypothesis testing, we basically use various procedures like cohort study, case control study, cross-sectional study, and the next one, that is ecological study. So the important one, especially here, we have the we will study later on, that is the case control study and cohort study. Okay, and last one that we basically mentioned, experimental study. So of course once we have to make the hypothesis, we formulate the hypothesis, then we test the hypothesis, and in the last stage then we have to confirm the hypothesis. So to confirm the hypothesis, in first two study, we observe that's why known to be known as observational study, and after the observational study it should be confirmed and known as interventional study. So the first two, that is the descriptive and the analytical one, so that should be known as observational study, while the experimental study, because observational are to be made, and here on the base observational, so data is collected on the base observation. Experimental study is to be known as interventional study, and for this we basically used different methods like RCT, randomized controlled trial, we use clinical trial, field trial, and the next one, that is the community trial. These are very important. So for analytical study, we mentioned this a lot of procedures are to be used. There is the cohort study, case control study. So on priority basis, basically related to there is too much important, especially the student of the pharmacy and other field, professional field. So basically cohort study is to be known as forward direction study or the prospective study. It's also known as prospective study or forward direction study. So in this study we make two groups, and both groups should be free from diseases, and we focus on the coming time. That is group which is to be in risk and may have the ability to develop disease due to that risk factor. Example, smoking is one of the reasons for the lung cancer. So we have to make groups according to the risk factor. So in one group we will include all those individuals which are chain smoker, and we will move in forward direction. That is, we have to wait for the coming 10 years. If high number is reported, then we will say that the smoking is one of the risk factors for the lung cancer. So cohort study basically is a forward direction study, and this is related to the future plan. So here basically we should have to make the group. So let's suppose we mention that smoking is one of the reasons for the lung cancer. So obviously we should have to start the data, and we will basically we have to make the groups. Okay, so in one case, in one group, we will include all those yes, of course we should have to include all those candidates in group which are free of the disease. Yes, but we have to study those candidates, and let's suppose we should have to select all those individuals which are chain smoker one. So of course we our study is related that smoking is one of the reason for the cancer, so all the candidate should be chain smoker, and then we should have to wait for the coming 10 years or 15 years. So if high number of data is basically reported and mentioned that yes, of course this is the reason that basically after collecting the data, yes, of course, if they were suffering from the cancer, so then we will mention that basically, of course, the risk factor which was the smoking, yes, that was true and one of the reason for the lung cancer. So in case of cancer, that's why it is known as prospective study. It means that the disease is not present anyhow. We basically we focus on the risk factor. In case of case control study, we basically made the two groups. That is, one groups basically we will include all those individuals which are suffering from the disease condition, and in another group we will basically include all those individuals which are free of the disease. So that's why the case control study is to be known as retrospective study. It means that the individual should have the disease condition, and the case control study is to be also known as the backward direction study. So it means that, let's suppose we mention that smoking is one of the reason for the lung cancer, so of course we will basically include all those individuals in our study which have cancer and they are chain smoker. So we will collect the, yes, of course we will collect the data regarding all those individuals who are suffering from the lung cancer. And yes, of course, if the data mentioned that the lung cancer was due to this problem, so yes, we will then mention that yes, of course, our retrospective study or our case control study regarding the smoking, that was the true one. So that was all about the today lecture, and that we have discussed, in which we have discussed about the epidemiology. What is epidemiology, definition of epidemiology, then basically we explain the terminology of the epidemiology, the various terminology of the epidemiology, then basically we discuss into much detail about the application or use of the epidemiology, and then basically we focus on the various uh, study that are too much important regarding the epidemiology, and that is the descriptive study, analytical study, and that is the experimental study, and all these play a very important role. So as for today concerned, so I think this is sufficient, and inshallah the remaining we will discuss in the coming class.